All right, everything wrong with a first generation 99 to 06 Sierra or Silverado, and start commenting now. So this is my opinion on everything that GM did wrong with this first style of GM truck. Now these are just my experiences as a mechanic working on them and driving them, and just because it hasn't happened to you doesn't mean that it's not a common problem, and just because I don't say it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened to you. There's breakdowns right across the board. It really depends on who made it. It makes a difference whether it was made on a Monday or a Wednesday. Makes a difference whether the guy just broke up with his wife who's assembling certain parts on it, just didn't care that day, right? But these are some overlying general issues that I feel GM could have done a lot better at. So, and right off the bat, number one, and you're all going to agree with this, is rust. I don't know why whether they cheaped out in paint or steel or protecting it or all three. But I've had clear coat peeling off within the first couple of years. For some reason, these fuel tank lids, they just start rusting away. Now we do live in a rust belt here with a big variance in temperature changes. It gets to minus 25 degrees Celsius and it gets to plus 35 degrees Celsius. That's a big difference for metal and plastics to expand and contract, and they also spray a lot of salt on the road, so that really wreaks havoc on these vehicles. The frames start rusting, start scaling a lot quicker than I think they should, and brake lines fail within the first few years. Maintenance plays a big part of it. If you under oil it from new, take care of it, wash it off more than a couple times a year, you can slow that down, but it's definitely an issue that they really need to address. I'm not even going to mention the second gens, which would be 07 to 13. Remember, they did declare bankruptcy in that time, and I think they chinched out and cheaped out even more in plastics, interior, and paint. The drive lines were reasonable enough, but anyway, we'll get in that later. One thing I didn't really like about is the tailgates. If you've actually banged into them, even just slightly with some work, they never seem to latch nicely, or you get one side latching and not the other. They could have really done a better job on that. So a big problem with the dashes is that the gauges stopped working, and that was just a large run of very poor quality stepper motors. Now the stepper motors are the little electric motors that run the gears, and basically what you need to do is desolder those from the gauge cluster and solder in new ones. We'll put the link on it where to buy them on eBay. We've done it before. This one's already been done, and while we were at it, we put blue LEDs behind it just for something different. But if you see your gauges fluttering or not working or jumping all over the place, it's not really generally the sensors. It is the stepper motors that are in the back. The steering as well, the intermediate shaft, so that's a shaft that kind of goes in between the steering column here and either your rack and pinion or your steering box at the front. They get sloppy right away, and you'll hear clunk in it, and not that it's ever going to fall apart, but for some reason that clunk, I've replaced intermediate shafts, and the clunk is back before you know it again. It's annoying while you're driving, and that's a big issue. These seats are very comfortable, but they have kind of a high riser that kind of goes beside your legs, and when you get out, you always rub, and it always seems to wear on this part of the seat here, and the cushioning is actually kind of cheap too. They're easy enough to replace, but the seats really are do seem to wear faster than other models that I've seen. Under the hood, these trucks came out with a push rod, old style engine that was in a 4.8, 5.3, 6 liter or an 8 liter. The 8 liter disappeared pretty quick because it was horrible on fuel. The worst thing about these engines is that they are not that great on fuel, but they are super reliable. These things are workhorses. We're just getting into that stage now where everybody's getting into an LS swap. We're actually putting one in the Mercedes there. That's a 5.3 out of a Silverado, and there's videos out there that using a stock short block and throwing some heads of cam on it, some springs and dual turbos, they got 1100 horsepower out of it, boosting it to like 40 pounds, and the engine is still holding up. And that was out of a 4.8. These engines, and that is why these engines are really popular for swaps, is they're very simple. No Nothing major really breaks on it. There was a bad run of blocks at a time, but there is with anything really, disgruntled employee or just a bad metal run, whatever it was. Not to say that yours isn't going to blow. I bought the Tahoe with a blown head gasket, and I know a buddy's gone through a 5.3, but generally there is a reason why everybody is choosing these engines for an LS swap. The ECUs are very easy to get into and upload your own tunes on it, whether it's naturally aspirated or turboed, and really that is the best part about this truck is the engine. It's the rest of the truck that seems to disintegrate around it, and that's unfortunate. Now, a lot of these issues are very physical, and you can see them. So if you're thinking about buying a truck that's already like we're 10 years later now after these were built, but you can crawl under it, make sure to check for rust, crawl underneath that, make sure it's not all scaly. Probably count on replacing the brake lines. They do get a pain because they curl around right by the ABS module down below there, and it's frustrating to do. It's not the end of the world. You can tell whether the seat's worn, you can tell whether the stepper motors are gone, and I'm sure that you guys have other issues, but something to look for if you're considering buying a truck like this. I'm still in this era of these trucks are cheap, they're affordable. I would still consider buying a used truck like this and not worry about having to call the auto club, because they are reliable enough. The drivetrains are plenty. I can go to the Wreckers and grab another 4L60 for $500 and throw it in. That being said, I wouldn't consider buying an 07 to a 2013. They really did cheap out. The Vortecs were good engines, but they were experimenting with with variable timing at the time and cylinder cutout. Lots of problems that are associated with those that don't that you can just ignore on these ones, and the plastics and the interior and the paint just does not. They really declare bankruptcy, and they really did cut corners. So when this model came out, I saw it going down the road, a 3/4 ton crew cab with a Duramax in it, and I fell in love with it. Like, one day I'm going to own one of those. Instead I ended up with a regular cab long box Cummins in my Silverado, but I never really liked the newer style. And I think it's because the doors are the bottom of the rocker panel. There is no rocker panel. The door goes right down, and for some reason that doesn't look right to me. I don't know why. I don't like the wide flares on it, and I don't like the square look of them. I don't like the interiors. I don't think they're comfortable, and I wouldn't consider buying a second gen. Third gens, the 14s to current, they're much nicer interior, better put together, I think, inside, but yeah. I'll be working on these vehicles for a long time yet, I'm sure. So if you have any other comments or I missed something, put it down below. And remember, this is just my experience as a mechanic. Now, I'm not going to do a review on a Dodge because of 15 friends of mine. We all drive Fords and GMs, and not one of us owns a Ram. So I can't share my experiences on what's typically wrong with a Ram. We looked up death wobble, and that was enough for us to not invest in a Ram. So we like pulling the engines out and putting them in lots of other cool stuff. So yeah, if you guys have comments, put them down below, and here we go. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you love the channel, consider heading over to Patreon. There's a lot of stuff happening there to help support the channel. And remember, if you're not filthy, you're not rich.